acceptable. Nepal remains commitment to a clean, sustainable future through clean cooking initiatives. By investment in sustainable energy, we can protect the environment, enhance public health, and drive economic progress. I urge policymakers, investors, and global partners to work together to make clean cooking a reality, contribute to sustainable and carbon-free world. Furthermore, I would thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. So with apologies, my job as moderator was to make sure that we finished on time, and I've failed.
Failed or you succeeded?
Well, no, I've failed, Minister, because there is some more perspectives I wouldn't mind just getting to the room. So if, with your permission and patience, I'd just like to eat into our lunch hour a little bit. We have two different types of perspectives. We have two international research agencies here who have their own perspectives, and then we have also some three representatives of the private sector. So I'm going to bring in those, and when doing so, I guess the challenge or the request is you have ministers here who are actually trying to do real programs, and so in a relatively short period of time, I ask you, what sort of key messages would you give to them? What key one or two pieces of advice would you give to them to sort of try to make a success of their own programs? To start that, I would like to call on Professor Watanabe, who is president of AREA, for your own perspective, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, moderator, and thank you, Honourable Minister Pri, for the wonderful opportunity. Before going into my prepared remark, I'm sorry. But just touch upon the solar cooker Minister mentioned just now. We had a very interesting discussion in the morning panel with the colleagues and the expert from Terry, how to scale it. Solar cookers. It's a very interesting discussion, and we also touched upon the carbon pricing, its relation to the carbon pricing. Minister, I think, touched upon a very important point. Just back to my point. My name is Watanabe, President of AREA, international organization located in Jakarta, Indonesia, serving for the policy making for ASEAN and Asia, India included. Our focus is, one of the key focus is energy transition in our region, and try to voice up, strengthen voice of the global south, India, Southeast Asia, Africa, and Latin America to international discussion. That is our role. And turning to today's topics, of course, expanding access in general to clean and reliable energy is essential for driving economic growth, improving people's life, and a sustainable future for developing countries. But despite being home to over the 56% of the world population, the developing countries generate only 18% of global power. This is a stark imbalance that translates into widespread energy poverty, limiting economic opportunities, exacerbating social inequalities. Turning to today's topic on cooking, clean cooking, I think Indians' case is a very successful model case for other countries to learn under your leadership, Minister's strong leadership, and building upon the successful model case in India. I would like to touch upon, emphasize 3 points. One is, of course, infrastructure and economic barriers. Number two is, as we discussed, cultural resistance. And the third is, of course, innovative and scalable solution. First, on the electrification and gas-based solution, remained constrained by high investment costs, infrastructure limitation. If you can look at the Southeast Asian countries like Laos, PDR, Cambodia, Myanmar, traditional biomass remains still widespread because of the, as you know, that the Southeast Asian countries is projected to become a net importer of gas by 2030s, underscoring the need for diversified, affordable solutions. Second, on the cultural and behavioral resistance remain a significant barrier. So experience from India and other developing economies has shown that imposing new technology without community engagement leads to resistance. So strategy must be tailored to local context and leveraging improved traditional stove design, for example, are important. Finally, innovation must be a key. Advancing sustainable bioenergy solution, second generation advanced biofuels, creating a competitive energy market will be crucial. And before concluding, just touch upon the Global South cooperation. Developed countries in Asia, India, Africa, and Latin America have a wealth of experience in overcoming energy access barriers. And stronger South-South cooperation is key. And the area, as I said, that located in Jakarta, Indonesia, is ready to support, to provide policy platform and policy engagement with stakeholders. Thank you for the opportunity, Minister.
Thank you very much, Professor. I want to bring in Mary Wallach, who's the Deputy Executive Director of the IEA. The IEA has made a number of very important pushes and initiatives in this area. So, Mary, what should ministers have in their minds here in terms of a successful program?
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to join you. I want to thank you, Minister Puri, in particular, for leading this ministerial discussion today and kindly inviting us to join you. I know Dr. Barol sends his regards and is just sorry he was not able to join you due to another big event in Paris where I know your Prime Minister was present and they had an opportunity, I understand, to greet each other. So just wanted to start by saying, you know, this has been and is a big priority for the International Energy Agency. Making progress on access to clean cooking is clearly one of the really important SDG 7 goals, including electricity to access, of course. And it's been so interesting to hear from so many of the ministers already. You're already taking, so many of you, really important steps, both in terms of setting very clear goals. As I think was referenced, and I think as many of you know, the IEA hosted just last year in May of 2024 a major summit on clean cooking, focusing on Africa in particular, as again, as was noted, nearly 1 billion people, 990 million people or households in people in Africa still lack access to clean cooking. So there's a major challenge there. And Mr. Minister, you rightly pointed out to the success and the great success that India has made in this regard. And I think having success stories such as yours can really lend a very encouraging example to others in terms of some of the solutions that can be approached. So I just wanted to mention, you know, a few. I think the challenges have already been touched on quite well, and so I just wanted to say a few words about them and some of the policy levers, again, that I think governments are already taking. But the issue of affordability and access is obviously a critical one. You know, the high upfront costs of clean cooking technologies and the limited fuel supply chains hinder adoption in some cases, especially in rural and low-income areas. The energy infrastructure gaps clearly need to be looked at. This is, you know, in many cases, unreliable grids, insufficient LPG distribution networks, although, of course, India has made great strides in that regard, but again, in many developing regions. But, and then this leads, of course, to the financing shortfalls and the challenges. So international financial flows will have and will play a really important role in advancing clean cooking access. We do agree that this is a challenge that should be achievable with the right political will, which I think our colleague from Malawi mentioned, as well as the strong participation not only of governments, to help set the right policy environment, but also the collaboration of both leveraging public funds as well as increasing role of the private sector, which was mentioned by some of you. Concessional finance will still need to be made available to support projects in some of the poorest regions. Some of you spoke to the acceptance and adoption issues, and I think it's really important to be mindful of those as well. There are, to some degree, cultural issues that we need to be thinking about in order to move all of this forward. And the policy levers, I know, again, many of you touched upon targeted subsidies and incentives, which as we saw in the case of India too, the direct subsidies for LPG, smart subsidy schemes such as the ones you've put in place have successfully expanded LPG access. The right regulatory and fiscal policies are really important. Reducing taxes on clean cooking equipment and fuels can help shift the market dynamics. Expanding distribution networks for LPG, electricity, and biofuels is really important. And I mentioned the importance of public-private partnerships to drive investment in the fuel supply chains and last mile delivery. And so just in a nutshell, just again, want to really emphasize just how important this is to us, to our members, in working with countries all around the world. We were really pleased coming back to the Clean Cooking Summit last year to have the President of Tanzania, as well as the Prime Minister of Norway co-host this with our Executive Director. And we're very pleased to welcome so many of you, a number of you who are with us today. This is achieving universal access to clean cooking will clearly require a combination of strong policies, innovative financing, infrastructure investments, and behavioral change initiatives. A multi-stakeholder approach, again, as has been mentioned, involving governments, private sector, and international organizations will really be critical to closing the gap by 2030 and keeping this at the very top of our agenda. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary. Minister Puri, you want to come in?
There's one point which which means it's available to everyone. You will see that people who don't need it end up taking advantage of it. I remember clearly, I think when the Prime Minister had taken over, when it was in 2014, he made an appeal that people who don't need it, a lot of people gave up those subsidized this thing. But today, for our LPG cylinders, we have a criteria of what, 12 points or so, 12 points, you have to tick those boxes, as a result of which we are convinced that the benefit is being availed of only by those who actually need it. And our companies actually undertake, because it's the private sector companies which are doing it, organized oil marketing company, they conduct surveys from time to time. Because what is available for a household which is a beneficiary and which qualifies under the economically weaker sector, 12 cylinders are available. But we did a calculation saying that 12 cylinders are not necessary. The set was, so when they look at, they weed out people also as part of this exercise. But the difference, the important thing is the difference between the beneficiaries of the scheme and the non-beneficiaries is not that much. I mean, if it's available to the beneficiaries for 7 cents in a day, non-beneficiaries at 15 cents in a day. So and there is also in India a difference between the commercial rate of a cylinder and the a domestic cylinder. Because the commercial cylinder, which is used by industrial establishments, restaurants, that's determined by the market. We don't interfere. So I think this is a very important point. And when you're designing policy, make sure that that benefit which you are going, which ultimately government has to bear the cost, goes only to the people who really need it rather than gets dispersed.
Thank you. the last stage or the last set of inputs, I appreciate we are overrunning, but a constant theme here has been the involvement of the private sector. And we have 3 private sector companies that have been actively involved in either researching or implementing the program here in India. So I'm going to call on both Vanda Insights, Total Energies and BCG to give their perspectives. But can I ask you guys, if you could keep your comments relatively compressed. Everybody's on tight timetables and they do need to have some lunch as well. So if I may. So first of all, Vedana Hari from Vanda Insights, if I may, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Spencer. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much again, Mr. Puri, for giving me this opportunity. For those of you around the table that are not familiar with me, my perspective comes from having observed, analyzed, reported on the oil and gas markets globally. I'd like to address a few points that came up from several of the comments made this morning. First of all, Mr. Puri, again, I think join everybody here in congratulating India in having progressed so much, so quickly in terms of bringing LPG into the poorer households. I think the flip side of that, I feel, is that the onus now on India is even greater because clearly countries around this table are going to be looking towards India because they clearly can't adopt a model from the Western economies. So you're going to be a role model even more, I think. Spencer, one of the points you raised earlier was, should it be economies of scale in terms of going after just one solution, LPG, or should it be a combination of solutions? So again, my experience with when it comes to energy, managing our energy needs, diversification is the best policy. So perhaps some sort of, obviously we can't go after 10 solutions either, so some balance needs to be struck. In that balance, I feel LPG will remain, should remain an important component. I don't think we can completely remove it. I think electric stoves is a good idea. I am aware that India has also progressed quite a great deal in bringing electricity to consumers that didn't have it previously. So electric stoves, I think, is worth pursuing. Something the government in Singapore does, and I know Singapore comes across as an affluent society, but believe it or not, which is where I live, by the way, Singapore, there are poor households in Singapore. A scheme that the government has used successfully is smart metering for electricity to households. I do wonder if smart metering electricity, basically it's pay as you go. So because households have limited cash available, you can pay every 5 days, 10 days, whatever, and your meter gets reset again. So that could be used in the case of electric stoves. That could also perhaps be used in LPG. So pay as you go. So it becomes, so that's less cash intensive for these families. I think biogas, that's the other solution. Definitely, please keep it in the mix. I was going to touch upon the cross subsidies, the tiered subsidy scheme. I think it's absolutely brilliant. I wrote extensively about it, the way India went about it in asking affluent families to give up. And I think that scheme worked wonderfully. And perhaps it's the only scheme of its kind globally in terms of tiered subsidies. Let me put out a slightly maybe controversial point there. You mentioned that the distinction between poorer and affluent families and what they pay for LPG is still relatively low. I completely agree with you. And this is a controversial point, but could we possibly get the affluent families to pay more? Cross-subsidize. So again, my aim is to put I stick my neck out and, whole of society approach, I think, is another point I wanted to make. I think we should not underestimate educating affluent consumers that why they should pay more they should not get subsidized for gasoline and for driving their cars is very different from changing the mindset in rural societies, changing behavior in rural societies. Some of the speakers mentioned schools. I think that's a brilliant idea. Whole of society approach, bring schools into it. Mr. Puri, you mentioned solar cooktop, solar stoves are still expensive. Can we look at community cooking schemes, and again, with schools, so where children are fed, but that uses, so there's less cooking needed at home. Families are encouraged to send their children to school as well, because that's where the cooking will be done. And that's where the children get to eat as well, especially girls that don't get sent to school. I think a lot of us, all of us around this table are privileged. I doubt any one of us, at least speaking for the Indian members around this table, have actually spent much time in really poor rural households. I feel working with NGOs, somebody who understands what the less privileged society members, how they behave. I think that might be a good idea as well.
And I think I'm going to...
The last point, I think PR campaigns. Sorry, Spencer. I think PR campaigns, India used one for polio inoculation. I think that's a great way I think societal education and awareness in rural societies is very important as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thibault Lesser from Total.
Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you to welcome Total Energy around the table. Thank you, Honorable Minister, to lead this discussion. So I'm the representative of Total Energy here in India, leading the marketing business, and I used to be in Africa earlier, so I can really testify what you said. India is a kind of an exemplary country in terms of clean cooking. We here, we market some LPG bottles, but really when we see what our peers, the national oil companies are doing is really impressive, and they are really doing the right things at the right moment, so congratulations. And for us, as Total Energy, I will highlight our commitment and what we do in Africa, because I have been there for some time and now based in India. So as you may remember, Patrick Pouyanné, our CEO, committed last year to give access to 100 million persons on clean cooking solutions by 2030. This is representing an investment of $400 million. So in Africa, precisely, we are present in 17 countries, and we are there for quite a long time. In some countries, we are there for more than 70 years. So we know the environment, we know the challenges, and so we'll continue to invest. So the idea in Africa is to reach 80 million people by 2030 to give LPG cylinders. And for that is to illustrate what you just said earlier. We do some initiatives. So obviously we invest in cylinders, bottling plants, infrastructure. We need also to engage our distributors, because the marketing of the cylinders are done by partners, and themselves they have also to engage micro distributors. And is where the NGOs are also important, because we need to have a different view on the normal road to market. The third topic is we need also to be innovative. So for example, in Kenya and Uganda, we give some smart devices for pay-as-you-cook system. So we are not the one to deliver that. It's done also with microfinance partners. And the last thing that I want to raise, we have to make it happen. I mean, that we can do a lot of things, but the make it happen is key. And so what our teams are doing on everyday basis is a kind of a caravan of awareness towards people in rural areas in order to explain what is clean cooking, what is the health, what is the time that can be saved thanks to that, and what are the solutions that we can propose. And once again, so we do that with a lot of partners. And for us, by the way, it makes sense. It's another type of marketing. It makes sense, but it's not only us. We have to engage a lot of actors. Is what we do in Africa today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's fascinating. And finally, Mr. Panandikar from BCG, please.
Thank you, Spencer. Given that food's being served, I'll try to be as brief as possible. It's an ungrateful task.
I know
that
really is pressure, isn't it, as a food served?
So I'll be very quick. I think the India story is one of the most amazing stories, I think, and it's been said enough. But let me just quickly highlight from my side what I think are the points, and I'll be incredibly quick. It starts with political will and the policy framework, which I think the minister has spoken very eloquently. The second is the financial support, targeted, tiered, all that sort of thing. Third is the infrastructure development. Fourth is behavioral change and awareness campaigns. Fifth is women empowerment. Sixth is innovation, access and affordability. And finally, selling the benefits of environment and health as much as you think about the carbon. I want to highlight three things which I think India really aced it in my mind. The first of them is actually making sure that the implementation, we don't talk about that. I think kudos to our oil marketing companies who actually took all of this and actually made it happen. I think you just mentioned the made it happen part. I think it's not an easy task. This is a massive country. Moving from 140 million to 330 million in an incredibly short time, I think is an impressive task. The second is change management. We don't understand that. I think it's easy to say behavior change. Behavior change doesn't happen easily. And so I think just the awareness campaigns, just the driving and working with NGOs, just the innovativeness in actually making sure that this is sticking, I think is amazing. And the third one, again, not to take away any credit, I just think the innovation in terms of access and affordability is impressive. Creating the digital platforms, whether it's from an ordering perspective, whether it's from a tracking perspective, the last mile in India is an incredibly difficult challenge. Every time we observe, that's not something that most companies can crack and solve easily. We see that that has also happened. So I think these are these three things. Is it replicable? We firmly believe that this is a replicable model that should be taken to many other parts of the world. Again, one of the core bases of this is the public-private partnership. This cannot be done by any one institution or one arm of society. I think it has to be done together, and I think you've pointed that out extremely well. Just 2-3 challenges very quickly, and I'll close. Continued financing will become a challenge as always. It's good that we've gotten this going. Getting to where we were was great. How do we make sure that the tiering is continuing to be refined so that whether we pay more from the affluent part or anything, every country has its context. How do we create the continued financing is continuing to be a challenge for the global south. And I think the second is, how do we further refine, if we do even see the India experience, this is not to put a black dot, an amazing story, refills. We do get situations in which refills don't happen. That number could vary from 10% to 30%. How do we make sure we refine this model so that that continues to happen? So clean cooking is actually really universal. And finally, since the theme of yesterday's inaugural session was multi-fuel, as more fuels come into the basket, how do we balance this all out, I think also becomes a challenge, because you're talking of a private-public partnership. So I think we need to think about that as well. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much. Minister Puri, I pass to you for the last word.
No, I found this discussion fascinating because insofar as immediate tasks at hand are concerned, I think this is one of the most pressing missions that needs to be addressed. Whatever the Indian experience, for somebody who's lived through it for the last 3.5 years since I've been associated, I believe the Indian model has relevance for other countries in the global south because our conditions are very similar. We have populations, developmental challenges, etc. So I think the Western models on this do not apply here in this case. Insofar as the Indian model is concerned, we are also still in a learning exercise. For instance, one of the points that my friend Vandana made was, why can't the affluent user, rather the person who's using a cylinder at normal price, not be asked to cross-subsidize the beneficiary of an EW? Believe me, that's very easy in a discussion like this, Vandana, and I'd like to have a longer discussion with you. But in a democracy, if you go, because other people are not affluent, they just don't fit into that EWS category, economically weaker section. So there is a very large population between those who qualify and the affluent. And frankly, in a democracy with elections all the time, if I were to say, you can say it, you get away with it very easily because you live in Singapore. But if I were to turn around and say, hey, you guys, you're slightly better off than, you better pay for the thing. Brazil, it wouldn't happen. I've lived in Brazil. There's no way anybody will buy. India, certainly not. We are already having a very robust debate in India on something called the freebie culture and the because the Prime Minister's idea is to make all these facilities economically viable through plans which are actually, it doesn't result in anybody getting free. So if we give you a solar rooftop, you produce the electricity, you use some for your personal consumption, rest get paid for it. So that's the one comment. Second comment I would like is that I am willing at an individual level to say that our oil marketing companies, and I invited, after the Deputy Prime Minister told me, I invited one of our companies to join us we could have a discussion over lunch or later. I think that replicability in the global south is there. How do we go about it? I've had very good discussions with the Gates Foundation. They were very impressed with our solar cooker, and they're wanting us to use the carbon route here domestically to see how we can do it. But my answer again to that is, I think the real answer comes when you do it on a very large scale, because then the cost per unit comes down and then it works. I personally am not intimidated by the $500 cost per unit. And somebody said, why not? I think you did, Vandana, on community. We're doing it. Where there are gurdwaras and there are other armed forces are doing it. Where because the armed forces cook for a large number of people, we are using solar cookers there. We've actually tested the solar cooker in 37 different locations. Some very cold, some very, it works. So armed forces are using it. But you know, that will not get public attention. The idea is to take it to those of our homes where the social impact, and I agree with our moderator, you cannot couch this in terms of what benefits will come on something other. You've got to immediately deliver so that the adverse injurious effects on the health are immediately measured. Behavioral change in this case I'm not worried about, because anyone who's used LPG or, you know, it goes from charcoal, you go to kerosene, kerosene is also very injurious, go to LPG, they will change immediately. In some of the other programs, like which I learned in Brazil, where a government program doesn't become a program of the people unless you make an effort. In the case of clean cooking gas, the behavioral change will come very quickly, provided you demonstrate it's there, and then the pressure which will come to change. But you have to ensure it is affordable.
And I think with that, we conclude. You can eat your lunch, and I think it leaves us to thank Minister Puri for bringing today's session together. Thank you very much, sir.
No, whilst we eat here, we can still have a discussion, so please feel free. But we must eat first.
Do you want me to carry on?
No, we don't want you to take the burden. I mean, you must eat more than the others, so. But anybody wants to make a comment whilst we're eating, they're most welcome. He is the head of our biggest gas company, GAIL. Yeah, please.
So I am Sandeep Kumar Gupta, CMD, GAIL India Limited, which is a natural gas leader in the country. And I just want to add the flavor of the fabulous India story on clean cooking.